Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introducing myself, my name is Kherma Aryani. I am from English Education Department 5C class at Islamic University Sultan Syarif Kasim Riau, Pekanbaru. And in this time, I want to explain about ex post facto research by subject research and development in English language teaching with my lecturer Sir Nuardi SPD MED. Introduction. Ex post facto research is a method that can also be used instead of an experiment to test hypotheses about cause and effect in situations where it is unethical to control or manipulate the dependent variable. According to Kerlinger 1970, has defined ex post facto research as that in which the independent variable or variables have already occurred and in which the researcher starts with the observation of dependent variable or variables. Next is correlational and criterion groups design. The first is the correlational study and the criterion group study. The basic design of such an experiment be represented this is X and O. X as an object and O as a subject. Three possible interpretations are open to the researcher: that the variable X has caused O, that the variable O has caused X, that some truth unidentified and therefore unmeasured variable has caused X and O. Next is characteristic of ex post facto research. The first is, in ex post facto research, the researcher takes the effect or dependent variable and examines the data retrospectively to establish cause, relationships, or associations and their meanings. The second is become apparent when it is contrasted with true experimental research. And the last is ex post facto investigation have, so to speak, a built and weakness, lack of control of the independent variable or variables. As a spectator suggests, it is impossible to isolate and control every possible variable or to know with absolute certainty which are the most crucial variables. Next is occasion when appropriate. Ex post facto research, ex post facto design are appropriate in circumstances where the more powerful experimental method is not possible. Ex post facto research is particularly suitable in social, educational, and to a lesser extent, psychological contexts where the independent variable or variables lie outside the researcher's control. This arises when, for example, it is not possible to select, control, and manipulate the factors necessary to study cause and effect relationship directly, or when the control of all variables except a single independent variable may be unrealistic and artificial, preventing the normal interaction with other influential variables, or when laboratory control for many research purposes would be impractical, costly, and ethically undesirable. And next, we talk about advantage and disadvantage in ex post facto research. Among the advantages of the approach are the following. The first is Ex post facto research means an important need of the researcher where the more rigorous experimental approach is not possible. The second, ex post facto research is valuable exploratory tool. Next is improvements in statistical technique and general methodology have made ex post facto designs more defensible. Next, in some ways and in certain situations, the method is more useful than the experimental method, especially where the setting up of the latter will introduce a note of artificiality into research proceedings. Next is ex post facto research. It is particularly appropriate when simple cause and effect relationships are being explored. And the last is the method can give a sense of direction and provide a fruitful source of hypotheses that can subsequently be tested by the more rigorous experimental method. And next, among the limitation and weakness of ex post facto designs, the following may be mentioned. There is the problem of lack of control in that the researchers is unable to manipulate the independent variable or to randomize her subjects. The second, one cannot know for certain whether the causative factor has been included or even identified. Next is, it may be that no single factor is the cause. Next is, a particular outcome may result from different causes on different occasions. And the last is, when a relationship has been discovered, there is the problem of deciding which is the cause and effect. The possibility of reverse causation must be considered. And next is designing an ex post facto investigation. The first is the correlational or causal model. Independent variable as X and dependent variable as O. Although one variable in an ex post facto study cannot be confidently said to depend upon the other, which would be the case in truly experimental investigation. It is nevertheless usually designated one of the variables as independent and the other as dependent. The left to right dimension indicates the temporal order. So, having established this, we must not overlook the possibility of reverse causality. The second model, the causal comparative, may be presented schematically as shown. Group A, independent variable as X, dependent variable is O1, and for group C, dependent variable as O2. Using this model, the investigator hypothesizes the independent variable and then compares has been exposed to the presumed independent variable X and a control group C which has not. The dashed line in the model shows that the comparison groups A and C are not equated by random assignment. Alternatively, the investigator may examine two groups that are different in some way or ways and then try to account for the difference or differences by investigating possible attendants. These two examples reflect the types of approach to causal comparative research, the cause to effect kind and the effect to cause kind. And next is we talk about procedures in ex post facto research. Ex post facto research is concerned with discovering relationship among variables in one's data and we have seen how this may accomplish it by using either a causal or causal comparative model. The first is identifying the problem area to be investigated. Second, we can make explicit the assumptions on which the hypothesis and subsequent procedures will be based. And the third is follow the planning of the actual investigation, and this will consist of the three broad stage identification of the population and sample, the selection of construction of technique for collecting data, and the establishment of categories for classifying the data. And the last, the final stage, will involve the description, analysis, and interpretation of the findings. Okay, I think that's all for me. Sorry for all my mistake. Thank you for the attention. See you in the next video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.